So I know exactly why you clicked on this video. Yes, we're talking about Playground. And yes, I know you see the thumbnail and everything, and we're going to get to what I consider to be the most traumatic part of this book. Now, there's some things I want to preface first when talking about this book specifically. I want to cover everything about this book, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which a lot of people are going to be very surprised there is a decent amount of good in this book. Yes, I know. The book that became very famous for Dead Children has good. But I want to also cover why this book got so popular around communities of book readers and stuff like this, and disturbing literature and, splatterpunk. Even though some people consider this extreme horror, it's very hard to say where this book lands. Now, I think I should start off with first kind of a summary and give you an idea of the type of book you're going into. Very brief, very quick, and all this stuff. And we'll dive deeper into the books when I talk about the characters and actually how I feel about this book fully. To give a quick summary, the summary of this book is an old lady named Geraldine is opening this invitation to families to have their kids come and play on this playground and test it out for a day. After they test it out, they are going to be given a specific set of money. I can't remember the amount. As well, in their town, they will receive this said new playground in their city, which sounds amazing to a lot of these parents, as it gives their kids something to do, and a lot of the families we have some of their own problems in the way they see stuff. But it is then soon revealed the playground is more of a setup for the kids to be sent there to die. Now, with this little bit of setup, I'm going to then talk about the characters as they're introduced, starting with he's in my top 3. Rock. Rock is unintentionally our central protagonist, and as well, he is, how do I word this correctly? Not our beacon. I would more say, in a way, our unstable protector, which we're going to get into a scene later on about how I feel with how they did a scene with him and another character. But with his introduction is also Donnie and his mother, who his mother is a complete jackass with the introduction we are given for them. But it gives us already an insight into Rock's mind when he's choosing these kids, because it is revealed he is a part of this playground experiment that is set up by his adoptive mother, Geraldine. Now, Rock in his own right is a really well-written character, as he starts off as the antagonist and starts becoming the, good guy. Not really the hero because of the fact of what he had done and what he will go through to get to his lengths of realizing, oh fuck, I did a fucky wucky. But then we have Donnie and his mother. His mother, we don't really have that much to talk about, and that will come up later of why. But Donnie is introduced as a traumatized child, a child that is going through a lot of trouble just at this few moments, because we see him on a swinging back and forth when his mom just does a quick yank and he fucking hits the ground. And practically for that much is all we get about Donnie, and we get for Rock, because Rock is very upset with what he sees happen to Donnie. Anyone should be. We are then also introduced to Tom, Molly, Isaac, Sadie, and Sandy. You're going to realize the reason why I forgot that is because, holy fuck, there's a lot of names. And this is when we're also given a little bit of character description for Tom and Molly, which is, it seems like, with the way it's worded, is it seems like they're having a trouble because one of them has a debt, a gambling debt, very specifically. And it's the only reason why they took this. It wasn't even just for more of the fact of the children wanting to go play at the playground. Hell, it even seems like some of them don't really want to, talking about Isaac, which Isaac is also in my top 3. we're already introduced to my top 3 characters, Rock, Isaac, Donnie. And I'll explain why with those, it's why they're my favorite characters. But it comes down to the way this is written. But they're going because of this debt they have and how they want to get out of it, climb out of it, and make a better life for their family. And it is also mentioned with Tom that he himself had a rough life growing up. That he had to practically toughen up is a wording they kind of use for him. So he's been through the gutter. He's been through the dirt. He's been through all this terrible stuff. We then get to the other family with Greg, Kip, CJ, Bobby, and Tara, I want to say. Correct me. Future me, correct me and put the name right here. And call me a jackass for not remembering these characters' names. I'm sorry. There are so many fucking characters in this book that it is crazy that I can remember half of them. Because the one I can't remember is their mother. The way we're introduced to them is by Greg talking to Kip and explaining why to Kip that he has to keep this going and why Bobby is a failure. Bobby is revealed to be the eldest son out of these children. He is also kind of going to become our antagonist as well as Greg. We're going to have technically 5, but we're going to go over that and all that stuff. And he is telling him that practically his older brother, Bobby, will not be able to live up to anything, which is really fucked up. And we're going to get into that too, because they really like shitting on Bobby. And it's unintentionally my favorite thing, because Bobby is a terrible fucking person. But he keeps them practicing. And the reason why his brother CJ is given so lenient is because of, as he's worded, the superstar. The one that is going to practically pull them out of debt, make them amazing. And now we fully get to see the family and their dynamic, because now he is practicing with Kip and outside, and they're talking about the way they're practicing. And then we go to Tara and her mother talking, which is she wants to be a swimmer. Her mother wants her to be a cheerleader because she doesn't want her to do that sportsy shit. But she gives her mother a gift anyway. It's a slap bracelet, like the ones you used to have as a kid when you'd smack on your wrists. Or then you pull out the metal and start slapping your friends with it. Because I remember that. It was violent. But we're given their whole dynamic, and it seems like for a fact she's very upset with her mother, that her mother doesn't accept her ideas. She then tells her, tell her dad about it, because her dad in a lot of ways wants this competitiveness. And it's already shown with the way Greg talks about Kip and CJ, because he believes in a lot of ways it's their way out. It's their ticket out and ticket to freedom. Which, yeah, very fun. But then we see CJ, who's reading comics and listening to music, and it's very apparent that CJ doesn't share the same mentality as the rest of his family, this competitiveness. It seems more in a lot of ways he just wants to have a normal life, be a normal kid. But he doesn't get that. He really doesn't get that. He's more stuck in his own ways of his family, and it's something that he has to break. They're then all called outside because of the fact they forgot they had the playground thing. And they all get ready and they all head to the playground. Now, these are the first few chapters of the book. We practically blitz through these in the first 4 or 5 chapters of these introductions for these characters. And to explain, it'll take you about maybe 10-ish, 30 minutes to get through all of this. Now, this is one of the problems I have with the book leading into these next 2 chapters, which is the fact it desensitizes you so fast that the death of children are no longer on your mind. And if you've read this book, you know exactly what scenes I'm talking about, and it is none other than the assault of Rock and Geraldine's pleasure ideas, which, oh my God, I'm just going to say this. Don't listen to this book at work, because you're going to get depressed in 20 minutes and want to die. That's not a joke. Because of the fact all my coworkers asked me what was wrong with me. How do I explain an old lady with a pumpkin dildo is more traumatizing than anything else you can imagine? And I'm not joking about that. But to explain those two scenes in a brief, very fast description, because I don't want to sit here thinking about this any longer than I have to, is Rock is brought back and is completely chastised by Geraldine, telling him that he had failed and practically that she never wanted him, and all of these things making him feel like such a terrible son, which later on is not true. He then is told to remove his jacket and his t-shirt, or well, his button-down shirt, which is then revealed that he has a branding on his chest saying, "Mine," which Geraldine did to him after she caught him having eyes for a maid. Yes, a maid. The most promiscuous idea. She then killed the maid as well. Let's go back to that later. Well, she is for some reason feeling some sexual attraction to him and brings him to bed, and they have happy fun times. Well, she has happy fun times. It is very much described for Rock that he wants to die. I would like to also bring up, Rock is like 6'6", 300 pounds of muscle. This man is tall. And if it isn't very apparent, I am not a tall man. I am not even a part of the short king community. I am just a average sized man. So if a 6'6" man came up to me and his 5'4" mother is somehow the more intimidating one, what the fuck? Now, I'm going to use one of the descriptors that it uses for this scene because it unintentionally made me very much laugh, which is Geraldine's micro rose penis was very unappealing to Rock. The description for a woman's genitalia being described as a rose micro penis will never not make me laugh, because that is absolutely crazy. And after he finishes her, he is then taken out of the room. And if you think we're done, we're not. We're then going into the worst scene of the entire book. Yes, I say this is even worse than children's death. And it's Geraldine's fantasies as she is with the pumpkin dildo. This video is getting demonetized. This video is not being shown to anyone with the amount of times I've used the word micro penis and yeah. But it describes this room, and I wish I didn't have to describe it because, this room is not a very fun room. This room is a very disturbing fucking room. She enters this room that is lined wall to wall in mirrors, and on each mirror there is a different dildo for her to please herself. But she walks down this room and she chooses this one that is very descriptive, which is, I'm just going to call it the pumpkin one, because every description for it is, oh my god, it sounds just like a pumpkin, which is, it is orange, warded, and also worn down from the amount of use. I'll let you imagine why as we proceed to go further. Geraldine then, this is not what I thought I was going to be spending my night doing. Geraldine then slips onto it and pleases herself as thinking about her mother's butt, because of the fact she was sexually attracted to her mother, believing that she had this deep connection. Even when she saw her mother cheating on her dad, her first thought wasn't, oh my god, my mom is cheating on my father. It's, oh my god, my mother is cheating on me. which, I'm sorry, what? But this, in a way, gives us our idea of Geraldine, because it's describing this very disgusting scene with her getting panties with blood in it and then shit as she plays with herself with it and eats it. Yeah, if you can't tell, I'm really disgusted as I'm talking about this. It shows us her mentality, because it then goes into why she proceeds to do this. And it's because of the simple fact she can't have kids herself. And it's the reason why she adopted Rock, believing that, oh my God, I found a child that's like me. And then proceeds to abuse Rock because Rock is nothing like her. And we're just going to skip over the way it describes her getting off it. But we're not... Hold on. There's one thing I forgot to mention. Is it mentions the glass is like double layered to handle the aggressiveness she's going to have with this pumpkin dildo. Which I would like you to think about that. That means she is hitting it with such aggression that the walls should not handle it. So they had to double layer this bitch up. Which, my God, that's a little crazy. You know, I don't really want to think about that anymore. We're gonna move on. We're then brought back to the two families at the same time. Greg and his wife, Tom and Molly, and their kids. It is explained they are both now arriving there, as Tom and Molly are a little late, and Greg and his family are on time because they believe that they are number one. That's going to be a running theme as we continue throughout the story, that they believe they are better than the rest of the families. But this consensus also draws into what makes them so different, which we'll get into as I get further into the book and start describing more and more and more. Geraldine finally comes out and greets the families and tells them, hey, it's great to see you guys, and we are about to get started by getting your kids already into the playgrounds and doubling the amount of money they were given. Saying that this is such an important test to her that she needs to make sure that everything works perfectly, that she herself knows everything is going to go well. Now, Tom at the moment is hesitant, like, why the fuck am I going to leave my kids alone in a playground? Greg is calling him a pussy. And you might have already noticed I skipped over something. The use of a specific word when it comes to describing the way Greg feels about his kids and gay people. I'm not going to use the word, and I'm not going to say the term, but you probably already can guess what it is. I would like to bring up this term is used a lot throughout the book, and the first time, I don't know if it was used for comedic effect, but because of the fact, after the scene I went through, I kind of chuckled to myself, not expecting that, like, low blow, practically. And it's a continuation of a low blow that we're going to see throughout the book. But we are then brought into the playground, and it is shown the kids are going around, looking around, and experiencing these new things. As well, the parents are brought to this room where they're able to sit down and watch their kids. Now, you might be wondering, why do I not remember Greg's wife that much? Why don't I remember her name that well? Well, it's because she dies right here. Yeah, so as they're sitting down and everyone else is sitting and resting, she had accidentally dropped the bracelet. And she moved her head just the right point for the mechanism that is supposed to practically wrap around your neck to jam her in the jugular and kill her right there. Yes, our first death is in the first 15 chapters, if I'm remembering correctly. There's 52 fucking chapters. You're going to sit through and watch this entire video as I describe every chapter. And then we're going to discuss the characters and all that stuff and how I feel, which I might more discuss when I get to their specific moments that define them as characters. But she dies there, and Geraldine slaps the bracelet back on her and goes, well, this is great. And as all the other kids are there, Geraldine noticed one's missing. And it was because she didn't want just, 3 different families. She wanted 2 families that had a decent amount of kids. But he chose one more. That being Donnie's family. And Donnie's family is just him and his mother. And she practically berates him, going, are you a fucking idiot? Why did you get this one family? We needed multiple people in one big family. And he's just sitting there taking it, like, just kind of sitting here like this. I would also like to bring up when I imagined him, I imagined the judge from Blood Meridian, but like nicer looking. So yes, I imagined baby hands for most of the book. Yeah. But as everyone else is in the playground and we see what's going on, we are then getting descriptors for every character that we're going to be more seeing. And one of them is our character Isaac, who's very much described as the stereotypical nerd. And Bobby is described as the stereotypical bully, being a fat ass. That is terminology it uses later in the book, and the fact that they keep fucking hyping back on it is kind of funny. But Kip wants to be like his older brother. So he and Bobby start bullying the shit out of our kid Isaac, to the point that he falls and hits his nuts on the rope, and his words are, well, you were never going to use them anyway. Subtle foreshadowing. But as this is going on, CJ then defends him from his own family, saying, knock this shit off and I can kick your ass. Practically hinting to the fact that CJ is the best in his family, the strongest. He's the smartest in a lot of ways, even though his sister kind of challenges him in intelligence in a good way, because she's one of the good characters. Now, as this is going on, we are then brought back to Rock's perspective, and he's hearing the doorbell ring multiple times over and over and over again, and he wonders who it is. It ends up being Donnie and his mother. And his mother is now berating Rock as well, going, what the fuck took you so long? I'd been waiting here forever. Is it really good to treat your guest this way? And he's just sitting there listening to this, looking at Donnie, realizing Donnie looks really small. And sometimes Donnie isn't even moving, and his mom is just yanking the leash on him and just like, you need to stop fucking moving, berating this poor child. And Rock can't take it anymore. And I forget how funny this like descriptor is, because the way it is in my head is Rock just grabs her with one hand and like WWE slams her to the ground, and she's just absolutely stunned, like what the fuck, as he then beats the living shit out of her, to the point that it is described that by the end all you hear is the sounds of mush hitting the fist, his fist hitting mush, it just being this wet noise. Rock then tends to Donnie, making sure he's fine, and he sits there and he goes, well, I can't let him play the games. What if he dies? What if this poor kid has worse of a time here? But if he's able to make it through, he might be able to go to an adoption center and get out of this scot-free. But in this sense, he feels like he has no choice. That he accidentally doomed this poor kid that he loves. And he now is holding on to the kid's leash. Well, he took it off the kid. He's not just now like, I'm Donnie's mom. I'm just now 6'6" and built like a brick shit house, and I'm going to carry this child with a leash. No, he's holding the leash as remembrance. But he then brings Donnie into the game. Geraldine chastises Rock, going, what the fuck? Why'd you kill his mother? And his reasoning was, she was trying to run. Yes, the scene I described to you where she is standing in the doorway, Rock picks her up and WWE slams her, is her running away. Rock is a master of deception. But she still is berating him, going, we needed all the parents and everything like that. But they can finally start the playground test. And yes, as you notice, we have finally made it to the infamous playground at 25 fucking minutes. And it's because of the fact we have so much going on in those first practically 20-ish chapters. Because the first thing that happens, and is the least violent thing, is Rock releasing dogs into the first playground, where the kids are then left in their own devices and having to defend themselves. Isaac isn't the most lucky, because one of the dogs then grabs him and is just starting to wrangle him around. And the other one is chasing CJ, who CJ is described to be practically a paragon. He runs and he tries to dart around, making sure they can get away from the dogs. As he does this, he's like, fuck, there's no way to get Isaac without taking care of these dogs. And there's only 2 dogs. So what does CJ do? He runs to the top of one of the playground instruments, and the fact I have to use this terminology again, WWE slams a dog into a fence. Yes, the way he does it and the way he described is he takes his shirt, sticks the head of the dog in the shirt, takes it off as he's slamming the dog down into said fence. Yes, the dog did not survive. Dog death 1. But it will be 2. He then proceeds to, throw the dog off of Isaac by shoving sand in its eyes, and it causes the dog to run. As they finally get out of there, it is then set up to the fact that this wasn't even Playground 1, but this was their way to get further into the playgrounds. Now, I want to kind of speed run this because of the fact the first introductory one is just them standing in a room where they're reading the playground rules and are told to go down a slide. This slide, in a lot of ways, is with barbed wires and razor blades. And there's only one who takes very aggressive damage, and that's Bobby. But we don't care about Bobby. Everyone fucking hates Bobby here, and you're going to see why. But they're also given playground rules they must follow for this one, which is to keep your head low and get the key and get out. Well, when they enter it, they see just everything here. And they realize there's baseball launchers and all this stuff. And if you get your head to a certain point, the baseball launcher goes off and tries to hit you. Well, they're also covered in blood, whether it be other people's or their own. They're all a little traumatized by this. And it is affecting all the kids in different ways. One of them being... Oh my God, it was Sam. I said Sandy. One of them being Sam, who... is at this point when they're already looking at something else, which is the hangman with a few words that are not complete because of, it being hangman, which it's very obviously that you must stab him in the head. She tries to run to the exit sign, which, I had to take a break at this point because of the fact I couldn't believe the next scene. And it was because of just how out of nowhere it was. Sam is trying to leave, which is one of Tom and Molly's kids. And as they're trying to leave, Sam steps on a landmine and just fucking explodes. Now, you must be thinking, this is where Sam dies, right? No. Sam's just missing a leg. But this leads to her death. Sadie is trying to help her, trying to drag her sister away, trying to make her safe and get her away from all this stuff. But she can't. She's just a child. And Isaac is too afraid to save her own sister. And the other ones are just standing there as they're watching the ceiling go further and further down. And it is very descriptive what happens to Sam, but I'm going to paraphrase it. She is practically crushed to death and in the process screaming the entire time. It is then revealed to them what they must do with the hangman, which is stab the hangman. But the hangman is through this jumping puzzle they have to get through to get to it. But they're just a little too, dumbfounded by the fact they saw one of the other kids die and everything like that. Water break. Like, I'm about to die from the fucking water. Oh my god. But, fuck. I might have to cut that out. But, they're traumatized by this except CJ, who believes he must be the Paragon. He must be the light in their darkness to keep them going. Which is such an interesting way to present this. As he then does the jumping puzzle and ends up getting to it, but they have a ball pit, and it explained the ball pit is filled with salt, and it's to make the wounds that they have hurt more. You're going to realize there's some shit that's just in the book that's not even really important, but it's just to make the kids hurt more. Because the salt thing is very briefly brought up. But we were also given a perspective from inside the room where Tom and Molly are fucking losing it. Because, well, obviously one of their kids died. And they don't know how to process this. How are you going to process the fact that one of your kids died? I don't know. I wouldn't want to think about that. But they're trying to convince Brick to let them out, to at least let them have some advantage, to get out of everything. But we then get Greg's one of his famous quotes of, "You don't need help, pussies. We can do this all on our own. You want to cheat? All right, be bitches." Greg is a national treasure that deserves to die. But as they then open the head of the hangman, they see a key. And the key is ending up for the exit sign that was the one Sam went to. Well, as CJ then goes underneath, he realizes there's a keyhole underneath this said exit sign. He puts the key in, and they're now able to get out. But they enter Playground 2, which is hopscotch. It is practically explained that during their hopscotch game, they are on a time limit. But they must go to two different doors, heaven or hell. And they have to choose between which one to go to. Well, Donnie, being the king he is, and you might notice I haven't mentioned Donnie for a minute. It's because any descriptor they use for Donnie is kind of funny, because it's like every character is like being traumatized by the event, and then it's just Donnie was there. So my imagination is just like, everyone's like, "Oh my god, look it, they're fucking killing her. Oh my god." Donnie. Yeah, no, that's the best thing about Donnie is like, we're going to explain why that's the way it is though, but Donnie is a champ. Donnie is a hero. Donnie is a king. He doesn't get traumatized by other children's death. That's really a dark sentence I never thought I'd say. Okay. But we're then given to the next one of hopscotch, and we're going back to Donnie, who just fucking blitzes the hopscotch, and they're like, "Oh my god, this kid is insanely fucking good." And as he makes it to the heaven door, motherfucker turns back around and is like, "I'm about to do my round 2 right now." CJ's sitting there like, "What the fuck is the kid doing?" And just hopscotches his way over there to stop Donnie from going back. But in this room, on both sides, there are cows that are being slowly lowered down into meat grinders. Now, everyone is trying to work their way through hopscotch. Tara and Sadie get through it perfectly. Isaac is next, and then it's Kip and Bobby. Well, as they're doing it, as Isaac is a little hesitant on getting to his last few, it ends up the cows are now just in the meat grinder. And these tubes that were on the side are filling up and are just shooting out cow guts. Isaac makes it, but Kip doesn't. Now, you might notice that I was saying I was going to dissect some characters and their key moments. This is Kip's. Kip, even though he had a chapter where he was talking to his father, has no other interesting bearings to his character. There's nothing else interesting about him at all, except for the fact that he just becomes Bobby's lackey. Yes, that is the only interesting thing about Kip, which sucks. And it's the same thing with Sam. These two characters have nothing really interesting about them, and their deaths don't affect you except for how brutal they are. And that's the one complaint I have about it, because the last few kids we get to have a lot of character, have a lot of development, where to the point you start caring about the fact if they die. But the first few, being Sam and Kip, and even to a point getting to our next one, they don't have that much character development. It is just very brief glimpses into who these characters were, which kind of fucking sucks when you are then given the most out-of-pocket death, which is crazy to say, in the fact that I have to be like, yeah, these kids don't have character. All their character is their fucking death. Yeah, but practically what happens to Kip is he falls into the meat grinder head first, screams for a second, dead. And it's shooting out his stuff now too. Bobby ends up making it because he's a skateboarder. He know how to balance. He good kid. This video is so fucking all over the place. It is like 1 a.m. I'm questioning my life. Why the fact I'm talking about this book. But we are seeing every other kid make it as the organs and everything is falling on them, and if they fall, they will end up like that. But they all make it, as I said, except for Kip. We then go back to Greg, Tommy, and Molly. Which Greg, he has no reaction to his son dying. He's just sitting there like, fuck. Well, guess he's dead. And that's practically the extent of that scene, is then Rock kind of reacting to it like, what the fuck? Shouldn't you be like more traumatized that your kid died? And him over here like, nah, man. And that kid was dead weight, practically. He was like, I didn't expect much from that kid, even though I was training him to be my successor. Yeah, it's so weird when we think about this and talk about everything involving this. But going back to the kids, and you might notice I haven't talked about Geraldine. The reason why is anytime we go to Geraldine, it is her celebrating her success of the playground with her mad Nazi scientist named Adolf. Not Adolf Hitler, but Adolf. And also, I'm going to say this real quick, side tangent. If any of you like Adolf Hitler's paintings, please go look at them again, because they're terrible. And it's very obvious why he was rejected from art school. But going back to it, we're also kind of seeing this character named Adolf. Well, I'm not talking about him because he doesn't have that much character, except that he built the playground and he's supposed to be an evil scientist. Yeah. And that's all you need to know, except he pulls the levers and he's the one starting all the contraptions. But Geraldine is eyeing these kids. Specifically, it was Sam, Sadie, and Tara. And I'm not going to explain the reason why, but you can probably already guess by, 10 minutes? At 10 minutes? I want to say 10 to 13 minutes, where it was describing her fantasy of her mother, what she wants to do with those kids. Yes, Geraldine is a no-no of a type of character. But we go to these characters again who are experiencing such trauma, such pain. And they go through the heaven or hell doors. This being unintentionally Sadie and Isaac, who go through their door, which is a swing. And then Tara, I feel like I'm I feel like I'm saying the wrong name. You know, I have someone probably screaming at me in the comic that I'm saying the wrong name, but we'll get back to there. Or is it Tessa? Yeah, if you notice, my memory is like a goldfish when it comes to names, and the fact this name was mentioned multiple times in a 10-hour story, yes. But they're kind of brought into this, like, if I'm remembering, it's like the spinner, the way it is described, but it's her, Donnie, CJ, and Bobby going through this. And if you remember, I mentioned a while ago, they had to stab this, practically this, like, hangman in the head. Well, CJ had kept the knife. But at this point, CJ dropped the knife, and Bobby picks it up and pockets it because he believes he can do better with it. Well, they make it through this playground as they realize how traumatic it is, with Isaac and Sadie having to jump across, and the other ones just having to survive the spinner until it gets to the other side. Well, they get to the next one, and this playground being the monkey bars, with at the bottom there being broken glass and snakes. Yes, original. But as this happens, a speaker crackles on, and what they hear is Molly. Molly telling them, don't climb the monkey bars. The monkey bars are covered in oil, and it's going to intentionally make you fall. You have to climb up top. And before she's able to finish her statement saying there's something you can't do, it stops. We then cut to Geraldine and her lackey Adolf going, how the fuck did they get that information? We go then to Molly, Tom, Greg, and Rock. Oh my god, there's a lot in that one. And they are thanking Rock for giving them this information. That this is perfect. Because they're all given one chance to at least tell their kids something that is going on and try to give them advice, tell them what to do to get through this very traumatic moment. And it is very much shown the difference between the characters because Greg just keeps going, you're pussies. You're all pussies. And Tom is sitting here like, if I get out of this chair, I'm whooping your fucking ass. And Rock is standing here like, I also want to kill Greg. Which is going to be a continuous theme. But Bobby is sitting there like, no fucking way am I going to get on top. He's like, we just need to worry about ourselves. And CJ brings up, well, we have to get everyone else up top first to get you up. And the descriptor it uses again is him being a fat ass. Now, I haven't used the terminology they'd use to describe Isaac when it comes to the way Bobby and Greg think about him. You know how I mentioned the terminology they use for homosexuals? The F slur. That is the way they described him, or very blank boy. Yeah. But as they make it over the monkey bars, they end up to the infamous scene that ends up being the cover of the book, the slide. And as you're looking at this slide right now, I'm going to bring up, this is not how I imagined it when it is described in the book. Now, why is this? It's because when it's described in the book with multiple scenes, it's described as a U shape. So when I imagine a U, I imagine this. I'm not imagining a half or a fucking 3/4 square. Yeah, that's not what I'm imagining. But that's what it wants you to imagine. But this is the way it's described, and even the way it's describing the circular saws don't really fit the way it is. Which is, it is saying that the circular saws are kind of it seems like they're being protruded up as well as being kind of shown like in a sequence. So the way I had imagined it is it's multiple buzzsaws in one section that raise up and go down. But as you see, no, it is one buzzsaw for each area, which gets more questionable in the next scenes that happen. But Isaac catches the sequence. And he proceeds to go down himself in the sequence and realizes he made it perfectly. And he tells everyone else, you need to go down in this timing of it. And everyone does. Everyone makes it except for Sadie. Which it is then described as she is sitting there. And I need to explain. It's described she's like a 6-year-old. And Bobby's like fucking 14, 15. He's like a big ass kid. His dad breaks through the intercom going, son, use that child as a skateboard and make your way to victory. I'm proud of you. And Bobby just fucking lights up and he's like, this is my time to shine. And he proceeds to, no shit, yank this kid off the ground, slamming her down, grabbing the knife, and think a Scream with Ghostface and the way that he kills people. That's what he practically does to this child. And then jams it in her to her neck so he has a balance for his foot and proceeds to skate down the slide with her body. Which, the way it is described afterwards is that it is a mangled corpse. Now, this is the other character that I talk about that has no character development. Because of the fact Sadie is only described as, I'm scared, don't leave me, and everything like this. Which is obvious, it's a child. But when you have practically every other character having some type of character development, it is very hard to state how I feel. And we cut to Tom and Molly's reaction, which is very visceral, very angry, and very violent, as Tom is saying he's going to kill Greg as soon as he gets out of this fucking chair. And that he keeps begging Rock to let him out of this chair to kill him, to fucking kill him. But he doesn't let him. He lets him sit there, and he's also angry at this. But as Bobby gets down, the other kids are sitting there shocked, and Isaac is about to attack him. But Bobby pulls a knife and points it at him and goes, if you try, I will gut you. And Isaac, he is sitting there fuming that he is the only sibling left of his family, that he wasn't able to protect them. Well, they're then going to the next playground, which is a seesaw, or not a seesaw, a spinner, which is over acid. And I'm going to quickly talk about this. I don't know where I'm going to put it up, but I hope I put it up somewhere that you can very much see it. The art for this one, because every chapter had art, but I listened to the audiobook for this, is very anime-esque. And even though I will never cover this fucking book, the slob, the person they have doing the art for this, oh my god, it is so amazing, and it's very frustrating because if these are two different artists, I'm not shitting on the artist for Playground. Let me first say that the artist for Playground did amazing work, but it very feels anime-esque. It feels like a manga always. But when we go to the slob, it feels like straight up art, and I'm not saying I wanted very descriptive, very intricate art for these characters' deaths, but it really kind of sucks. And if you notice with the art that we have, it is two characters' deaths. Well, as the spinner is going, Isaac ends up not being so lucky, and he ends up being on one of the ones that is broken. And it's practically leaning him back. And he's asking for help from anyone, that being Bobby, that being CJ, that be Donnie, that be Tara, that be anyone. Well, the only one closest to him is Bobby. Bobby pulls a knife and he's about to cut his fingers. That's when Tom breaks through going, you try it and I'll fucking kill your father. I have him in a headlock right now. And Bobby doesn't know what to believe because how would this guy have his dad in a headlock? But Greg is such a loudmouth that you can hear over the intercom him go, he doesn't have me. Do it. Well, we then cut to Bobby cutting Isaac's fingers. And Isaac has a realization that if he's left alive, all the other kids are not safe. Donnie, CJ, and Tara aren't safe because of the fact he is his dad's lackey. So Isaac has the great idea of charging at him and taking him down with him. And this is a very descriptive scene of what happens to them. And this is when the depression really hit me because of the fact Isaac, as I said, was my top 3 characters. And as they hit the acid, it is described them popping up and down, trying to get out, trying to fight for their lives, but sadly not being able to. Now we'll talk about Bobby and Isaac in full. Bobby being a bully, very obviously. But he is a bully that is very much dictated by his father, by the fact he has never gotten love from him. And that is all he has wanted, love from his father. Which is sad to say. Why a character is so devoted to the fact that he needs this love, that he needs this satisfaction from his dad, who is a dick. Isaac, on the other hand, is always described as a kid that is being bullied, a kid that is brought down to his lowest. But at that moment, he overcomes his biggest bully, Bobby, and becomes a hero in someone's story, rather it be his or Donnie's. And this sucks because he was such a good character and he is killed off in such an unsatisfactory way because, well, he shouldn't have died. He should have been the last one of Tom and Molly's family to survive, but this doesn't end up being the case. But he ends up breaking out of his shell and becoming the person to stand up against bullies. Now, that leaves only 3 kids left. 2 of Greg's family and Donnie. And now this next one that is seen is a seesaw with a counter at the top saying that you must hit 10 circles, practically going up and down multiple times. And the first few they struggle to do because of the fact there is a spinning circular blade up top. And as well, they don't realize how high they have to go until practically their hair is touching this saw blade, which fucking terrifying in the first place. But it's not the part that makes it so heartbreaking. Because as they finally go through the first intervals, it is then revealed that someone had turned on fire, so now their calves are being burned. And this is also what made me dislike her character, Tara's character, a little bit, because of how she's described throughout the book, and then the way they do her in this scene, which is her practically not being able to handle the fire, not being able to handle the pressure of having to not just worry about herself, but worry about someone else. While CJ, on the other hand, had been worrying about someone else in the entire book. He had been worrying about everyone, thinking that if he's the only one that is able to stay calm, that is able to stay sane, it might be able to bring some hope to their group. But as it is going on, they're going through the intervals, they end up hitting the last one, but at a cost. That being CJ. Because CJ, as they are going through this the entire time, he ends up burning his legs more and more because his sister can't handle it that much. And it's to the point that it knocks him out. And as he launches himself up for the last time, what happens is he ends up not getting knocked out in that launch. And his sister, as she launches back up, ends up realizing, oh my god, he's not awake, and has to lower herself into the seesaw, and they're hooked down. I like to bring up in the armpits. And as this happens, it grazes her hair, but he then hits the spring at the bottom, and they then hit the last interval. And as he is being launched up, she realizes she can't stop herself. She can't stop what's about to happen, which is CJ having his head dissected into 3 different parts as it then hits the chair, knocking over the seesaw. She then is very much unlucky because what happens to her is she is set ablaze in this fire on the ground, and she realizes, oh my god, this is where I'm going to die. I'm not going to make it. But then this is where Donnie just comes in like a Giga Chad and pulls her out of the fire like a goddamn king. And he's sitting there burned on the arms, and she is severely burned herself, having most of her body burned. But Donnie's just standing there like still deadpan face. And they then are going through the last playground, which is revealed to be a rope tower. And it is revealed if they are able to ring the bell, they are done with the games. Well, this is when Donnie finally has his moment. But we're going to go back to CJ real quick. CJ's character is very interesting because of the fact he's played as the main character. He's played as the good guy, played as our hero. Through the entire book, he is held up in this paragonic light, where the fact is he's not doing what his family wants him to do. He is becoming a better person. He is not influenced by his father. He has become an amazing kid. Now, why isn't he in my top 3? And it's because that's all his character is. And this brings up my major problem with the book. This book, or I'll get back to it because we're almost done with the book itself. We're going to go to now Donnie's quintessential scene, and I will describe Donnie, and then I will describe Tara, and then I'm going to describe the last few characters, as the last few is very centric to them. Donnie's scene is then him finding these building blocks that have letters on them, and he begins to spell out words that describe specific things and talk about himself, saying, I will go, saying, I will do it. And he is then asked, why has he not talked before? And he goes, Mama says I talk too much. And as he's getting comfort saying that's not a bad thing, it is revealed his tongue was cut out of his mouth. So even if he wanted to talk, he couldn't. Now, Donnie is a very interesting case, and this is where I'm going to talk about his character. Donnie is a victim who, in his own way, was so traumatized from everything he had gone through that he couldn't be there. He was more desensitized to the violence. He was desensitized from everything because of the simple fact he didn't understand it, because he was so used to it. And Donnie's character is beautifully written because of the fact every time we go to Donnie in any scene, I maybe made a joke about it, but Donnie was there. The reason why this is such an interesting quote of Donnie was there is it doesn't give us a play into his mind. It is just let us to his own imagination that, okay, is this not traumatic to Donnie? Is he just not really understanding the situation? It's very much left up to interpretations of what the fuck is going on in Donnie's head, which in my opinion is such an amazing way to do this. But this is where it kind of brings up a very big, interesting point. Donnie is a well-written character, and it becomes very poignant that his whole story is about the cycle of abuse and breaking it. But I can't continue that because there's one other character I have to talk about. But we're going to talk about Tara, who is the idea that you don't have to be like your parents, like CJ, who is breaking the cycle of becoming an hypocritic dickwad. But she is also left to her own vices and becomes the person that is now a burn victim, who is going through all these hard times because of what she had tried to do, and it unintentionally let someone down. And she doesn't want that to happen again with Donnie, because Donnie is a kid. Donnie is someone who she believes can have a longer life than her. But Donnie believes he can do it with the rope tower, even with what is now being seen spikes protruding. But before they're able to go any further, over the loudspeaker a voice cracks through, that being Rock, saying, "The games are over, I'm coming for you." And before we're able to process this, we're finally brought back to Rock and Tom and Molly and Greg, which Greg is losing it going, what the fuck are you doing? My kid is about to win the game. And Tom and Molly thanking him going, how are you going to get these kids? Because the only reason why he decided to save them was Tom and Molly asking him, please save these two. They don't deserve to die. Which shows Tom and Molly's character, but I'm going to get back to them. Adolf and Geraldine walk in and are asking what the fuck he's doing, realizing he's not scared of them anymore. That they are just now in his way of his objective. And now we have our mad scientist pull out a gun and start shooting Rock. This doesn't affect him. He then breaks the man's arm and breaks the circuitry that is powering the seats and is letting them all go. Well, Tom and Molly go into hiding for a second. Greg, he does too, but behind the chair of his wife, and he says, honey, get down. Which should show your mental state for Greg. Now, Geraldine then grabs the gun and shoots Rock a couple of times too in the stomach, but it doesn't take him down. Maybe practically makes him a little woozy and all that, but it doesn't completely knock Rock down. As Tom is going to try to make a run for it, Greg stops him and puts him in a headlock and goes, where the fuck are you going? You still owe me a fight. And he puts him in a headlock and he's holding him with his legs. This unintentionally is what leads to Greg's quintessential moment, which is Rock coming over and shoving his entire hand in Greg's mouth. And this is when the image of Judge in my head changes, because it is described he has a ham of a fist, so that means he has big hands, and he is just shoving it in Greg's mouth, suffocating him to death. As we are also seeing with Tom, that's what's happening to him, as he's being choked out with the legs, no matter the help from Molly. Now, I get to talk about Tom. Tom is a wasted character. Tom is described as being cool and collected, and yes, he even is, even after his family is dying. But the problem is, I don't believe he should have lost the fight with Greg. Hell, it is even described that Tom is this hardened kid who's gone through such a terrible life, and he doesn't want his kids to go through it, which is why he's so protective. But I don't believe he would have turned his back on Greg. I believe full-heartedly he would have whooped that man's ass. And that's the problem as well. They don't have that much character. Except for him being a caring father, and as well of, oh, we need to get out of here. Come on, what's wrong with you? What did they do to you? You don't belong here. This isn't right. And that goes with Molly too. Molly is just a one-note character of, yes, she goes through emotions, but it's her being the caring parent. And that's the same thing with Greg. Greg is the ruthless parent. He only cares about winning. Now, when you're reading this, it's not really presented that way. But when you start thinking about it more and more, because I've had a week to think about this, and I need to say, it's very interesting when I then describe my thoughts as I'm dissecting this and getting a little bit more aggressive about it. But they're very one note. They don't have that much character. They're not given that much depth. It's like, it's going to sound fucked up. You know how Batman, he has his two parents, and if we're not talking about Flashpoint, they don't have that much character. It's literally just they're there to die and they were caring parents for the initial idea. That's how Tom and Molly feel. They feel like they're supposed to be the caring parents. But going back, Greg is then killed. And if it isn't very apparent with the way I've been talking about Greg, I don't like him as a character. And he goes back to the whole sentiment of what I said with Tom and Molly. But Rock is wounded severely. He might not live for that much longer. But he has one thing left in mind that he must do. Kill Geraldine. And Molly's sitting there going, no, we need to get you to the hospital. But he says, right now, if I don't kill her, we're not going to get out of this place alive. which is such an interesting thing to bring this up with her. Well, it's when he starts exploring the house, going through everywhere he must go through. And he realizes her room is unlocked, and as he's looking in there, it's the first time a gun is mentioned on her mantle that is gone. He then looks into the other room. The room that I had mentioned to you earlier. The dildo walls. But she's sitting there waiting for him, waiting for the moment she sees his reflection in any of those mirrors. She unintentionally lets herself be known, though, by cocking the gun, letting Rock know he's right there. Now, her biggest fault is the fact Rock built this room. So he knows exactly where he's going to have to go. He knows exactly where she's going to be. And that doesn't stop him. As they have a little scuffle and she hits him once or twice, he breaks through one of the windows and beats the shit out of her, shoving her mouth into every dildo in the room and breaking every mirror in the process. And then he proceeds to pick her up over a glass shard and drops her on it. But as this is stated, she tries to play more sympathy points, going, "What are you doing? I'm your mother. You shouldn't be doing this. It isn't right." And he goes, "I'm the motherfucker." Killing Geraldine there. And Geraldine goes back to the fact of what I'm saying is she is practically generic evil, where there's not much character except that she's a bad person, that she's a bad character, that, oh, she's bad. But it harkens into the fact she's a very disgusting character, and is the whole reason why when I read this book, I had no reaction to the kid's death as visceral as people made it seem. And the reason for that might be because of the fact I was desensitized from the beginning. When her scene happened with the dildos and with Rock, I became very desensitized. I had no fear. I had no really sense of how disturbing the fact these children dying were because of the fact that scene happened, which is a big problem. These are supposed to be very significant moments. And yes, the kids' deaths are described in horrific detail. But because of the fact of Geraldine's character, I wasn't as traumatized by them. She is just generic evil. She orchestrated the entire events in a lot of ways, yes, causing the deaths of all these characters. But the problem comes down to she had nothing really interesting except she was just really evil. And I'm not saying you need to make this intriguing villain that you have to sympathize with. No. It's good to hate someone, and you fucking hate her. But you don't hate her as much as you hate someone like Bobby or Greg. And it's because of the fact Bobby and Greg are practically through the entire fucking story and are actually motivating more of the shit to happen instead of like Geraldine, who's sitting there watching it all happen, cackling at her own inventions, her own devices, everything going on. But then we go to Rock, who is realizing he doesn't have that much time and he needs to save the kids. So he goes back to Tom and Molly, with Tom finally awake and him being thankful for his life being saved. Molly says they need to get him to the hospital, but he says he doesn't want to do that. He says he needs to see the kid one last time. And they have to go through multiple layers to get to this point to the kids, where it's then revealed how bad Tara is. Half her face completely gone, and half her arm is just completely burnt to a crisp. And Donnie is just there still. But it's revealed Tom and Molly might be taking these kids, might be able to help them in some way or some form. And they're then exiting the building, and as they're doing this, we see Rock look at the first ever playground that they were in, and the thoughts going through his head. And Molly's like, "We need to get you to a hospital," and he goes, "No, I don't deserve to go to a hospital. I don't deserve to be saved. And he says, but I'm going to do something else. Something I've wanted to do since I was a child. Play on the playground. And our last chapter is describing Rock as he is thinking to himself, as he was as a character, and what type of person he was as he plays on said playground. And as he dies. But this is what made Rock such a good character, is his development. As he becomes practically a part of the problem, realizing he must evolve from the problem. If he doesn't, he's going to be as bad as Geraldine. He's going to be as worse as everyone else. Now, he does die. And Rock is the best character in the book, as I've stated. Now, I can dissect the themes and everything like this of, oh, you don't need to be your legacy and everything like this. The problem comes down to, I don't want to just go over themes. I want to go over why this book is considered so terrible. And it's because of the simple fact of children's death. And as I more think about this, as what I was originally going to say was this book is well written. Which it still is to a point, but the problem more comes down to the way it treats death. It treats death in such an interesting way as more of a shock factor on the brutality that is happening instead of the death itself. The death should be the more traumatic thing because this is a child dying. You don't need to grind them up in a million different pieces. The fact that it's a child that you should care about should be enough. But this is something I can give the book credit for, and it's something so interesting. The fact that I wanted a kid to die. I wanted Bobby dead. I didn't want that kid to fucking live. Even though he was a victim of the own cycle that I keep talking about, that I keep pushing about, that I keep describing in every fucking moment. But it's because of the fact I was so enthralled with the book. I was so intrigued. I was so interested. And I think these deaths would have been more effective, more shocking, if it wasn't for the simple fact in the first 10 chapters, chapters 7 and 8, where it has that scene with Rock and Geraldine, I would have probably been more traumatized like everyone else. I probably would be saying this book is absolutely terrible and deserves to burn in the fucking gutter. But because of the fact I was already completely desensitized, I started taking the book for the book it was. Which is, it's just shock factor with interesting writing. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Sometimes that is the best type of writing. Sometimes it is the most interesting writing. And does this change the fact I like the book? No. And I know that's going to be very shocking as I am very much being critical about everything. But it's because of the fact the book is well written. The book actually makes you care about characters. It makes you intrigued with the events that are going on. It makes you care. Which should say a lot. Yes, you can say, well, it's kids. Of course you're going to fucking care. But that's not the point. The point is, it makes you care for characters. Because there's books that have written the same amount, the same detail, and you don't care about the kids. You don't care who dies or who lives. You're just like, oh no. And it's very interesting that I can say this book is good. I wouldn't suggest it to everyone because it's not everyone's cup of tea. It might be the only thing I read from this man, Andrew Bogarde, because I've seen what's in the slob. I have seen the art. I have seen everything related to it. Please don't request it, because if you do, I might then. But it's because I've seen what else can be in this genre. Something its same length or even shorter with more interesting writing and more interesting characters and more nuance. Now, do I say this is a good book? Yes. Do I say this is disturbing? Yes and no. Because I believe in a lot of ways this is very disturbing, but in other ways I believe this book has nuance. It understands what it's doing full-heartedly. Now, do I think this is written as a shitpost to a point and just to make disturbing facts? Well, with the fact that we have the second book, Playground Children of Divorce, which when you look at this, I think R.L. Stine. This looks like an R.L. Stine book, full-heartedly. I feel like I'm going to walk in here reading Goosebumps or something. And even it's showing one of the scenes being the swings for Isaac and Sadie. But the reason why I say this, do I think it was just written for shock factor? Shock factor. Because if you look at his merch store, that is what you see. That weird little creepy fucking entity that you see being the main descriptor, the main thing, the main draw, because of the fact that's how he's selling his merch. And you might be like, well, why isn't he showing his face? Here's the problem. You do get to see his face. If you look him up right now, you can see his face. And it is very much tied to his name that he is the writer of all these books. Just really weird that, he's hiding it. But those are my feelings about this book, and as well, what I think, how I feel, and everything like that. And I know it might be very surprising for some people where it's just like I'm shitting on the book, but I say I like it. But I do suggest people to read for their own opinions and to give me your own. Because just because this is my opinion doesn't mean I didn't gloss over things because of the fact I didn't find them important. But it also doesn't mean you won't like it. It also doesn't mean you will like it. You're probably going to read it and disagree with me on some of the characters for a fact. You might think Tom is a very intricate and interesting character. You might read it and you might think Geraldine has depth that makes her less than just evil. But that's where it makes us different. So please, take the time to read the book, and I hope you all have a good day, good night, and goodbye.